Well, here we are.
I'm standing at the counter of a small internet cafe in downtown Playa del Carmen, staring at my phone screen. The message is clear. Transaction declined. Insufficient funds. The teenage cashier looks at me with that mixture of pity and impatience I've become familiar with. I try my other card. Same message. I have exactly 47 pesos in my wallet, about $2.50. The air conditioning is broken, and sweat drips onto my phone as I try one more time. Still nothing. The irony isn't lost on me. 11 months ago, I walked into this same town with more money than I'd ever had in my life, confident I was making the smartest decision of my retirement. Now I'm rationing coins for internet access, trying to figure out how to tell my daughter that her 62-year-old father is stranded in Mexico with nothing. That was 3 weeks ago. Let me take you back to where this all started. My name is Robert. I'm 62 years old. And up until last year, I thought I had life figured out. I'd worked as an electrician for 37 years in Phoenix. Not glamorous work, but steady and reliable. Hot attics, complex wiring problems, difficult customers. I'd handled it all. I was disciplined about saving every dollar I could, accumulating $240,000 in retirement savings by age 62. Not enough for Arizona's rising costs, but I'd researched Mexico extensively for 2 years. Every forum, every blog, every retiree guide pointed to the same conclusion. Playa del Carmen could make my money last 20 years, maybe 25 if I was careful. The decision felt inevitable. I sold my house for enough to clear the mortgage and add to my savings. I liquidated my 401k, taking the tax hit, but freeing up my money. I closed my accounts, arranged for my Social Security checks to be direct deposited internationally, and by March booked a one-way ticket to Cancun. The finality of that one-way ticket felt liberating and terrifying at the same time. I rented a one-bedroom apartment 6 blocks from the beach for $650 a month. It was basic but clean, with reliable AC and hot water, luxuries I'd learned not to take for granted. My Spanish was basic, but I was determined to improve. Those first weeks were everything I'd hoped for and more. The morning air was crisp before the heat set in, perfect for beach walks where I'd watch fishing boats return with their catch. I established routines quickly. Morning beach walks, afternoon Spanish lessons with a patient teacher named Maria, exploring different restaurants each evening. The expat community was welcoming without being intrusive. I joined weekly coffee gatherings, where retirees shared tips about everything from banking to healthcare. A Thursday poker game that was more about conversation than cards, and volunteered at a local animal shelter where my handyman skills were appreciated and my broken Spanish was met with encouraging smiles. It was at the animal shelter that I first met Carmen. She showed up one Saturday with abandoned puppies from her restaurant. Mid-40s, confident, with graying hair pulled back practically, and the directness I appreciated in business owners. There was something about her energy, focused but not frantic, caring but not sentimental. "You're the electrician," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Carmen. I own Marisco's Carmen, the seafood place near the ferry dock." I knew the restaurant well by then. The smell of grilled fish drew me in twice, and both times the food was excellent. Fresh, simple, perfectly prepared. "You run a nice place." 22 years I've been feeding people in this town, she said with obvious pride. "Started with just me and a gas burner on the corner. Now I have 8 employees and we're busy every night during season. It's been good to me." Over the following weeks, I started eating at Carmen's restaurant regularly. She'd stop by my table to chat about business challenges, her daughter in Mexico City, the town's changes. Our conversations became more personal and genuine. She told me about building her business as a single mother, the challenges of earning respect in a male-dominated industry, her pride in employing local families. She'd been married once, divorced 15 years earlier when her husband's drinking became more important than his family. She focused on building her business instead of looking for another relationship, channeling all her energy into creating something lasting. By my 4th month, Carmen and I had developed genuine friendship that went beyond the typical expat local dynamic. She would ask about my Spanish lessons and volunteer work, offering encouragement when I struggled with grammar. I would ask about her restaurant operations and her daughter's career, genuinely interested in their lives and challenges. That's when she first mentioned her expansion plans. "I've been thinking about opening a second location," she said one evening. "There's a space available near the tourist strip, bigger kitchen, better visibility, but the build-out costs would be significant." "What kind of investment?" I asked. "Maybe $60,000 US. Equipment, renovation, permits, inventory. Mexican banks won't lend to small restaurant owners, especially women." The idea developed slowly in my mind over the following weeks. I was spending less than budgeted, mighty $1,200 a month, instead of the $1,800 I'd planned, and my money was earning nothing in low-interest savings accounts. A business investment could provide better returns and the sense of purpose I'd been missing since retirement. More than that, I'd be contributing to something real, something that mattered to the community that had welcomed me. 3 weeks later, Carmen mentioned urgency. "The owner gave me until October to decide. If I can't commit, he'll lease it to another restaurant that's been circling the space." That night, I did calculations on the back of restaurant receipts, then went home and did them properly on my laptop. $60,000 was 25% of my savings. Significant, but not catastrophic if managed properly. If Carmen's projections were accurate, my investment could return 15 to 20% annually, far better than my savings account's pathetic interest rate. When I told Carmen the next evening I was interested in partnership, her reaction was immediate enthusiasm followed by business-like caution. "This would be a real partnership," she said, leaning forward across the table. "You're not just providing capital, you'd be investing in a business requiring ongoing decisions, shared responsibility, and real work. I don't want a silent partner, I want someone who cares about our success." That's exactly what I wanted to hear. We spent a week working through details that felt thorough and professional. Carmen would handle all operations, staff management, supplier relationships, and customer service. I'd provide capital and help with planning, budgeting, maintenance, and any construction issues that arose. We'd split profits proportionally to our investments. Carmen contributed 22 years of expertise and sweat equity. I contributed $60,000 cash. The transfer was straightforward. I moved the money from my US account to Carmen's business account, ensuring proper documentation. Carmen's lawyer drew up our partnership agreement. Carmen secured the lease and began renovation. I visited daily, helping coordinate contractors and offering construction suggestions. Carmen worked 18-hour days managing both locations. The new restaurant opened 6 weeks later with celebration that filled both places. For the first month, numbers exceeded projections. Both locations stayed busy. Profit margins were strong. I felt genuinely proud of what we'd accomplished together. But the first sign of trouble came at the end of our 2nd month. Carmen asked to meet away from the restaurants. She seemed stressed, fidgeting with her coffee cup. "My mother needs gallbladder surgery," she said without preamble. "The pain is getting worse every day, and my family doesn't have money for a private clinic. The public hospital here has a waiting list of 4 months. I could see the genuine worry in her eyes. This wasn't just about money. It was about watching someone you love suffer. The private clinic costs $8,000, but she could have the surgery next week, Carmen continued. The request felt reasonable. Our business was generating good cash flow, and I could see Carmen's genuine distress. I agreed to the loan immediately. Carmen paid back $4,000 over 2 months. 6 weeks later, another request. My daughter Lucia lost her job in Mexico City, Carmen explained during another coffee meeting. Her voice carried the weight of a mother watching her child struggle. The telecommunications company downsized their entire customer service department. She's been looking for similar work for 2 months without success, sending out resumes every day. She needs $5,000 for rent and expenses until she finds work. You know how expensive Mexico City is. Her rent alone is $800 a month. I could see the genuine worry lines around Carmen's eyes. This wasn't just about money. It was about a mother's fear of watching her daughter fail, despite doing everything right. I agreed to a personal loan. Lucia found employment 6 weeks later, and Carmen began making payments on both debts. But then Carmen's brother had his accident. He fell from a construction ladder, Carmen explained during a morning call, her voice shaking. 3 stories up, landed on concrete. His back is badly injured, and the local doctors say he needs specialized treatment that isn't available here in Playa del Carmen. We need to get him to a hospital in Mexico City, possibly the United States, if the damage is as severe as they think. The costs could be $25,000 or more, maybe even more if he needs multiple surgeries. I could hear the desperation in her voice. This wasn't just medical bills. This was about a man's ability to ever work again, to support his 4 young children. Robert Miguel has 4 kids and a wife who doesn't work. If he can't return to construction work because of permanent disabilities, his family will have nothing. Against my better judgment, I agreed to loan Carmen $25,000 for her brother's medical expenses. This brought my total loans to Carmen's family to $38,000. Carmen arranged her brother's treatment in Mexico City. The surgery was successful, but Carmen frequently traveled there for his care. Her absence from our restaurants was noticeable. Customer service remained adequate, but the personal attention that distinguished our establishments began to suffer. 3 months later, Carmen returned with another crisis. Lucia is pregnant with complications. She needs to stop working and can't afford Mexico City rent. She wants to move back here temporarily, but she'll need $800 monthly support for 6 months. I agreed to provide monthly support, insisting on formal documentation since my total commitment was approaching $45,000. Lucia moved to Playa del Carmen and began helping with restaurant administration. For several weeks this worked well, but I began noticing irregularities in our financial records. Daily cash reports didn't match my observations. When I asked for detailed statements, Carmen became defensive. "Are you questioning my honesty?" she asked. "After everything we've built together, after all the help you've given my family?" That conversation happened Tuesday. By Friday, I realized I hadn't seen Carmen for 3 days. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Lucia claimed she had business in Cancun and didn't know when she'd return, but there was something evasive in her manner. Carmen never came back. When I accessed our business bank account, I discovered Carmen had been systematically transferring money to personal accounts over 2 months. Small amounts at first, then larger sums. The account that should have contained at least $15,000 in profits had less than $3,000. Lucia quit the next day, claiming family emergency. Within a week, key employees left for other jobs, apparently recruited with promises of better pay. Suppliers began demanding immediate payment for outstanding invoices I didn't know existed. Both restaurants failed within a month, and I watched everything we'd built crumble. The final bills were devastating. Back rent, supplier debts, employee severance, and closure costs consumed another $32,000 of my savings. Total loss, $142,000. Not just the original $60,000 investment, not just the $38,000 in family loans, but an additional $44,000 in business debts and closure costs. My remaining savings, $98,000. I hired a lawyer to investigate Carmen's whereabouts and explore legal remedies. He was honest about my prospects. She could be anywhere in Mexico, or she could have left the country, he said. Even if we find her, recovering money through Mexican courts will cost more than you'll recover and take years. The hardest part wasn't the financial loss. It was recognizing how completely I'd been manipulated. Every family emergency had been carefully orchestrated to gradually drain my savings while making me feel like a generous partner rather than a victim. The medical emergencies had probably been real, but Carmen had seen them as opportunities rather than problems. Each crisis had been perfectly timed, each amount carefully calibrated to push my boundaries without triggering suspicion. I'd thought I was building a business partnership and helping a friend. Carmen had been running a sophisticated con targeting exactly my profile, a retiree with savings, living alone in a foreign country, eager to find purpose and community. With $98,000 remaining and monthly expenses of $1,800, I had roughly 4 years before my savings would be exhausted. I decided to stay 6 more months to plan my return to the United States and save transition costs. Those 6 months were the loneliest of my life. The expat community that had welcomed me now felt like a reminder of my failure. I could sense the whispered conversations when I walked into the Wednesday morning coffee gatherings, the way people would change the subject when I approached. I could sense their judgment and pity. How could someone with my experience and background have been so easily deceived? How could a man who'd successfully managed money for 4 decades fall for such an obvious scam? My daughter Sarah had been supportive but worried when I first moved to Mexico, calling every few weeks to check on me. When I finally told her what happened, her reaction was sympathy mixed with frustration that was painful to hear. "Dad, you could have asked me to research this woman, this business opportunity," she said during an expensive international call that I could barely afford. "I could have helped you think through the risks, maybe found information about her background online. You didn't have to do this alone." She was right, but I hadn't wanted help. I'd wanted to prove I could build something meaningful, that retirement didn't mean just spending down savings until I died. When my 6 months were finished, I had $84,000 remaining and a one-way ticket back to Phoenix. The flight back was nothing like the optimistic journey I'd taken 13 months earlier. I stared out the window as the Mexican coastline disappeared, wondering if this was what complete failure looked like. Phoenix looked the same, but everything felt different. The heat seemed more oppressive after a year of ocean breezes. The cost of everything shocked me. A simple lunch cost more than I'd spent on dinner in Mexico. I rented a small apartment month to month, found part-time work at a hardware store where my electrical knowledge was useful, and began rebuilding a life I'd dismantled with such confidence. The hardest part wasn't the practical challenges of starting over at 63. It was the shame of explaining why I was back, why I was working retail when I should have been enjoying retirement, why my careful planning had ended so badly. My story became simpler with each telling. It didn't work out the way I'd planned. Now, 6 months after my return, I'm working full-time at the hardware store, slowly rebuilding my savings one paycheck at a time, and accepting that comfortable retirement at 62 had been a fantasy I couldn't afford. If I'm lucky and stay healthy, I might reduce my hours at 70, maybe 72 if Social Security can carry more of the load. I don't hate Carmen, though I probably should. She identified an opportunity and exploited it with professional skill, reading my personality perfectly from our first meeting. She saw a lonely retiree with substantial savings, no local family connections, and a deep need to feel useful and respected. Every conversation, every shared meal, every moment of apparent friendship had been calculated to build trust and dependency. I made myself an easy target through loneliness and the dangerous combination of substantial savings, unlimited time, and the deep human need to believe that someone genuinely cared about me. The Mexico I remember isn't the Mexico that actually exists. It was largely a reflection of my own needs and desires, a place where I could be the person I wanted to be rather than the person I actually was. Carmen was just part of that reflection, showing me exactly what I wanted to see until it was too late to see anything else clearly. If you're thinking about retiring abroad with your life savings, thinking about investing in businesses you don't understand, thinking about trusting people you've known for less than a year with money you can't afford to lose, just remember this: the person you become when you're lonely and eager to belong isn't the same person who made smart decisions for 40 years. Loneliness makes you vulnerable in ways you can't imagine until it's too late. And the difference between those two people can cost you everything you've worked for.